Michael Carter had everything money could buy: penthouses, cars, even his own charity foundation. But lately, the silence in his mansion was louder than any applause he'd ever received. The world saw success. He only felt emptiness. Father's Day was supposed to mean something, but since losing his wife and unborn child years ago, it had become just another date circled in grief. That evening, he sat by the window of his 60th floor office, watching the rain smear the city lights into memories. He didn't notice the small figure across the street, a girl clutching a bag, staring up at the tower like it held the answers to her little prayers. Her name was Lily, 11 years old, wearing shoes 2 sizes too big and a red ribbon in her tangled hair, the only thing she owned that still carried warmth. The orphanage she stayed in was old and crumbling, but she was known there for one thing: her kindness. Even when dinner was just bread, she'd share half with someone hungrier. That morning, when she overheard the caretaker mention Father's Day, Lily had gone quiet. She didn't have a father, but she drew one in her notebook, a smiling man in a suit, holding her hand. Underneath she wrote, "Maybe he's out there somewhere, feeling lonely too." By evening, she decided she'd make a gift. Something small, something from the heart. She took a flat stone from the orphanage garden, washed it in rainwater, and painted it with a word she wished someone had told her: "You're not alone." Now, as thunder rolled, she crossed the street toward the Billionaire's building. The security guard watched in confusion as a little girl pressed her nose to the glass door. "I want to give this to the sad man upstairs," she said softly. "The one who looks out the window every night." The guard hesitated, but there was something about her, sincerity that money couldn't fake. He sighed and called the front desk. Within minutes, Lily found herself stepping onto a marble floor that echoed every drop of rain still clinging to her. When Michael finally looked up, he saw her, small, soaked, and holding something out like it was the most valuable thing in the world. "For you?" she whispered. He blinked, unsure. "Do I know you?" She shook her head. "No, but you look sad. Sad people need gifts too." He almost laughed, but the innocence in her eyes stopped him. Carefully, he took the wet paper bag and peeked inside. When he saw the painted stone, his throat tightened. The simplicity of it, the purity, it hit harder than any boardroom compliment or charity award. "Who told you to come here?" he asked. "No one," she said. "Sometimes you just feel it, when someone's heart is crying too loud." Her words silenced the world for him. He sat there, holding the tiny stone, realizing how long it had been since anyone had looked at him like a human being instead of a headline. Lily smiled shyly. "Happy Father's Day," she said. "Even if you don't have kids, you can still be someone's hero." Something broke inside him, not in pain, but in release. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. Michael wanted to say something, but emotion strangled his voice. Instead, he reached for his wallet and pulled out a thick envelope. Lily shook her head. "I don't need money, sir. Just smile once, so I know it worked." He did. For the first time in years, he smiled, not because he had to, but because he felt something awaken. Outside, the rain slowed, and a faint glow stretched over the skyline. Soft, golden, forgiving. He looked at the stone again, whispering to himself, "You're not alone." And for the first time since his loss, he believed it might be true. He didn't know it yet, but that one small act, that single gift, would change both their lives forever. The elevator doors closed behind Lily, leaving Michael alone in the vast silence of his office. The hum of the city below returned, but it no longer felt the same. He sat there, staring at the tiny stone resting on his palm. "You're not alone." 3 words that tore through the walls he'd built around himself. He remembered the last time he'd smiled like that, years ago, when his wife, Grace, had painted his tie with her lipstick just before their doctor's appointment. For luck, she had laughed. But luck had run out that day, taking both her and their unborn daughter. Since then, he had built empires, yet every night ended with the same ache, an emptiness wealth could never soften. Now, a little girl with no family had walked through the rain to remind him of something he had forgotten, the beauty of small kindness. He placed a stone on his desk beside the empty picture frame, then opened his laptop. His inbox was flooded. Mergers, board updates, charity requests. But he couldn't focus. Instead, he searched for the orphanage name the God had mentioned, St. Mary's Home for Children. A single image appeared. Cracked walls, peeling paint, a few children smiling through hardship. And there, in the back of the photo, was Lily, her red ribbon glowing like a spark in the gray. He exhaled softly. What kind of world lets a child like that struggle? The next morning, before sunrise, Michael's car pulled up in front of the orphanage. The building looked even worse in daylight. Broken windows, a sagging roof, and a yard full of puddles. The caretaker, Mrs. Ellis, blinked in disbelief when she saw who stepped out. Mr. Carter? The billionaire. He smiled faintly. Just Michael today. Inside, children peeked from behind door frames, whispering. Lily stood at the end of the hallway, clutching her notebook, her eyes widening. You came, she said. I did, he replied. You forgot your ribbon last night. She gasped as he held it out. It was clean, neatly folded. He'd found it near his office chair. Thank you, she said, tying it back in her hair. Michael looked around. You live here? She nodded. It's not so bad. We have stories, and Mrs. Ellis lets me paint when there's paper left. Something inside him stirred again. You like painting? I love it, she said, her face lighting up. When I paint, I forget hunger and rain. He smiled. Maybe you could paint something for my office wall. Her eyes went wide. Me? Why not? He said. The best art comes from honest hearts. He spent hours there, talking to the kids, learning their names, their dreams. Each story chipped away at his loneliness. Before leaving, he quietly handed Mrs. Ellis an envelope. She tried to refuse, but he pressed it into her palm. It's not charity, he said. It's gratitude for reminding me what love looks like. Later that evening, back in his mansion, Michael placed Lily's drawing beside the stone. She had painted a small house under the rain, and in the corner, a man and a little girl stood smiling beneath a shared umbrella. He touched the paper, feeling something he hadn't in years, peace. But fate rarely lets peace rest for long. That night, a headline broke across every major news outlet. Michael Carter's company under fire, accused of fraudulent deals. It wasn't true, but rumors spread faster than truth. Investors panicked, partners turned cold. Within hours, the billionaire who once inspired envy became the target of ridicule. The next morning, as he left his house, reporters swarmed his gate, shouting accusations. For the first time in years, Michael didn't fight back. He just felt tired. Across town, Lily watched the news on the old television in the orphanage hall. Her heart clenched. The man she'd made smile was now being crushed by a world that never forgave. She ran to Mrs. Ellis. He didn't do it. I know he didn't. The caretaker sighed. Sweetheart, sometimes life isn't fair. But Lily wasn't ready to accept that. That evening, she wrote a letter, messy handwriting, smudged with tears. Dear Mr. Michael, don't listen to bad people. You said love is real, so keep believing. You're not alone. Lily. She took the same paper bag from before, placed a letter and a new painted stone inside. This one said, stay strong. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. The next morning, she walked again through the rain, determined to reach his mansion gates, unaware that her small courage was about to pull Michael back from the edge of despair. By the time Lily reached the mansion gates, the air was thick with shouting voices and flashing cameras. Reporters clustered outside, their umbrellas crowding like vultures around a wounded soul. She clutched her paper bag tighter, her small shoes splashing through puddles that had formed overnight. One of the guards recognized her from the day before. Hey, little one, it's not a good time. Mr. Carter's busy. She looked up, eyes fierce in their innocence. He needs this. Please. It'll help him remember. The guard hesitated, then nodded, quietly slipping the bag past the crowd. Upstairs, Michael sat in his study, his phone buzzing endlessly, calls from lawyers, Partners, people who once smiled in his presence now demanding answers. He didn't notice the guard enter until a familiar crumpled paper bag landed on his desk. "That girl again, sir," the man said gently. Michael froze. Slowly, he opened the bag and pulled out the letter. The shaky handwriting and little doodles around the edges hit him harder than any lawsuit could. "Stay strong." It read, "You're not alone." He felt his throat tighten. The same phrase, twice now, from someone who had nothing, yet gave him everything he'd lost faith in. He leaned back in his chair, whispering, "You have no idea what you've just done, kid." Later that day, he made a decision that stunned everyone. Instead of hiding behind lawyers or PR teams, he called for a press conference. Reporters filled the hall, ready for blood. Michael stepped up to the microphone, no notes in hand, no rehearsed lines. He looked tired but calm, like a man who'd already walked through the storm. "I've spent my life building towers," he began, voice steady. "But maybe I forgot the foundation that really matters. People. Integrity. Kindness." A murmur swept through the room. Cameras flashed. "The truth will come out," he continued. "But even if I lose everything, I won't lose who I'm becoming again." He paused, fingers brushing the painted stone in his pocket. "Yesterday, a little girl reminded me that love still exists in the smallest acts. I won't let this world take that lesson away." That clip went viral. Millions watched. Not a billionaire defending himself, but a broken man rediscovering his heart. People began sharing stories of their own kindness, of how small gestures had changed their lives. Lily watched the news at night, her face glowing with pride. She clapped her hands, shouting, "He remembered! He remembered!" Mrs. Ellis smiled faintly from behind her knitting. "You did that, Lily." Days passed. The investigation cleared Michael, his name restored, his company's reputation slowly mending. But something inside him had shifted permanently. He began visiting the orphanage every weekend. Sometimes he'd read stories to the children. Other times, he'd just sit in the garden, watching them play, laughter echoing through the cracks of a place that deserved joy. Lily always saved him a seat on the old wooden bench beneath the maple tree. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled through the leaves, she brought him a half-finished painting. "It's us," she said proudly. He smiled. "You made my hair too thick." She giggled. "You can afford it." He laughed, really laughed. The sound startled the birds, sending them fluttering above the orphanage roof. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes, and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. That night, while leaving, Michael noticed how quiet the halls became after sunset. The orphanage power flickered. The walls seemed to sigh with exhaustion. He turned to Mrs. Ellis. "How do you keep this place running?" "Faith," she replied softly, "and children's laughter until that runs out too." He nodded, eyes glancing toward Lily's dormitory window where a small red ribbon hung. "Not for long," he said. Within weeks, renovation crews arrived. Painters, electricians, carpenters, all funded quietly through Michael's foundation. He didn't want credit. He wanted warmth to fill that building the way Lily had filled his heart. But one morning, when he arrived with books and sweets for the children, Mrs. Ellis met him with tears in her eyes. "Michael, Lily's sick." The world tilted. "What?" "She's been hiding a fever for days," the woman said. "We thought it was just exhaustion, but it's worse. The hospital took her in this morning." For the first time in years, Michael felt panic, real, raw fear. He didn't wait another second. He rushed to his car, ignoring his phone, the meetings, everything. All that mattered was a little girl who'd painted his heart back to life, and now lay fighting for hers. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and quiet dread, that cold, sterile air where hope always felt too fragile to breathe. Michael rushed through the corridors, his coat still dripping from the rain outside, ignoring the stares from nurses who recognized a face from television. He wasn't a billionaire right now. He was just a man terrified of losing someone who mattered. He stopped at the pediatric ward. Through the small window of room 206, he saw Lily, pale, frail, her tiny wrist swallowed by hospital tape and wires. The red ribbon still clung to her hair, dull now, like it too was losing strength. Mrs. Ellis sat by a bedside, whispering prayers. When she noticed Michael, she rose quietly, eyes red. "She's been asking for you," she said. He stepped closer, heart pounding. "What happened?" "They said it's pneumonia. Advanced. Her immune system was already weak. Malnutrition. Years of neglect. It just caught up." Michael swallowed hard, forcing his voice steady. "She'll get the best treatment. I'll bring in specialists, whatever it takes." Mrs. Ellis nodded, clutching his hand. "She believes you can fix everything, Michael. Don't let that little heart be disappointed." He entered the room quietly. Lily opened her eyes, heavy and tired, but when she saw him, her lips curved into a faint smile. "You came again," she whispered. "I'll always come," he said, kneeling beside her bed. "You kept your promise. You told me not to be alone. Now it's my turn." Her fingers, small and trembling, reached for his. Did the world stop being mean? He smiled through tears. "Not yet, but it's learning." They sat in silence for a while, the heart monitor filling the room with slow, rhythmic beeps. Every sound felt like a countdown he couldn't stop. Later that night, Michael spoke with the doctors. They said the infection had spread. It would take more than medicine. She needed strength, nourishment, rest. Things no money could instantly buy. So he stayed, night after night, reading her stories, bringing small gifts, telling her about the stars outside the window. He told her about Grace, his late wife, and how she believed angels were children who never forgot how to love. "Maybe she's one of them now," Lily said softly. "Maybe she sent me to you." He smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Then remind her to stay close, okay?" "Promise," she whispered. For the next few days, the hospital became his world. He ordered better meals for the children's ward, donated new beds, even painted murals of sunrises and wings. Every nurse started calling him the father of the ward. But behind the gentle smiles, fear still lingered. Lily's condition wavered, some days brighter, some darker. One evening, after she fell asleep, Michael sat outside her room, exhausted. The world outside had grown quiet. He looked down at the painted stone he now carried everywhere. "Stay strong." He closed his eyes and whispered, "Please, just let her stay." Then he did something he hadn't done in decades. He prayed, not for wealth, not for forgiveness, but for a child who'd given him a reason to believe again. Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight. A few days later, the doctor approached him, smiling gently. "She's fighting back. The fever's dropping." Michael exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. "Can I see her?" "Just for a minute," the doctor said. He entered quietly. Lily's eyes fluttered open. "Did I scare you?" she teased weakly. He laughed, his voice cracking. "Terrified me." "Then don't be scared anymore," she said. "I think your wife told me it's not my time yet." He froze. "What?" Lily smiled faintly. "I saw her in my dream." She said, "Tell him I kept a ribbon." Michael's heart stopped. Grace had tied a red ribbon around her belly the day before she died, the same shade Lily wore now. He sat there, unable to speak, as tears streamed down his face. "See," Lily whispered, closing her eyes again. "Told you, love never leaves." He sat beside her all night, holding her hand. A man once defined by loss, now reborn through a child who refused to let hope die. And in that fragile hospital room, something divine stitched two broken souls back together, thread by thread. Morning sunlight filtered softly through the blinds, laying warm stripes across Lily's bed. The heart monitor still hummed gently, but its rhythm had steadied, no longer a fearful reminder, but a quiet song of endurance. Michael sat there, eyes half closed, one hand still clasping hers. He hadn't left that chair in days. His beard had grown, his eyes carried the weight of sleepless nights, yet there was peace in his exhaustion, the kind that comes from loving someone selflessly. When Lily finally stirred, she blinked at him and smiled faintly. "You look tired, Mr. Michael." He chuckled. "That's what happens when you make friends who forget to sleep." She giggled softly, a sound so pure it made the whole room feel alive again. I had another dream, she said suddenly. There was a big house, not like your tall glass one. It was smaller, with yellow curtains. You were there, and so was she, the lady from before. Michael's heart clenched. Grace. Lily nodded. She said, "Thank you for finishing what I started." Then she hugged me and disappeared. He couldn't speak for a moment. All he could do was watch her, this child who had somehow reopened a chapter of his life he thought had been buried forever. "Lily," he said softly, "when you get better, I want to show you something." Her eyes brightened. "What is it?" He smiled. "A surprise. But you have to promise me something first. Keep fighting. Deal?" "Deal," she whispered, holding out her pinky finger. He linked his with Hayes, sealing the promise. That same afternoon, Michael left the hospital for the first time in days. Not to escape, but to build. He called his foundation team, his architects, and his legal advisors. "We're starting something new," he said firmly. "A home, not a business. A place for children who feel forgotten. And we're naming it after her." "Lily?" his assistant asked. He smiled. "Yes, the Lily Home of Light." The plan was set in motion instantly. Land purchased, designs drafted, every corner built with intention. Bright walls, wide windows, an art room, a library, all shaped by the kindness of a little girl who had given him back his humanity. Every evening after work, he returned to the hospital, updating Lily on the progress. She'd listen with awe, her imagination painting the place in colors only she could dream. "Can it have a garden?" she'd ask. "The biggest one," he'd reply, "with sunflowers taller than me. Then it'll be perfect." Weeks passed. Her strength grew little by little, until the day came when she could finally step outside into the hospital garden. Michael walked beside her slowly, one hand steadying her shoulder. The spring air carried the scent of blooming lilacs, and the skies stretched endlessly blue above them. "Feels like flying," she whispered, lifting her face to the sun. He smiled. "That's the world saying thank you." If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. A few days later, a letter arrived from Michael. It was from the city council, final approval for the Lily Home of Light. He drove straight to the hospital, bursting through the doors with a grin that startled the nurses. He knelt by her bed and whispered, "It's happening, Lily. Your home is real." Her eyes widened. "Our home?" "Yes," he said, voice trembling. "Our home." But that night, as the stars blinked above the city, something inside him stirred uneasily. The doctors had warned him. Recovery didn't erase fragility. Lily's heart was still weak, her lungs still scarred. One bad cold could undo everything. He stood outside her window, watching her sleep. Moonlight brushed her small face, making her look like the dream she'd once painted for him, a light too pure for the dark to touch. He whispered through the glass, "You saved me, kid. Now I'll spend the rest of my life saving others, for you." The next morning, he visited the construction site. Workers hammered and shouted, bricks stacked like building blocks of redemption. Amidst the noise, Michael closed his eyes, imagining Lily running through those halls, laughing again, free. But fate, as always, waits quietly behind moments of joy, watching, waiting for when love is strongest to test its truth. And soon, that test would arrive, breaking and mending hearts all over again. The morning began with promise, sunlight spilling across the newly laid foundation of the Lily Home of Light. The workers cheered as the first wall went up. Michael stood among them, dust on his shoes, sweat on his brow, feeling something he hadn't in years, purpose. Every nail, every brick, was a heartbeat of gratitude for the little girl who had brought warmth back into his cold world. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, until he saw the hospital's name flash across the screen. His smile faded. "Mr. Carter," the doctor's voice trembled slightly. "You need to come. It's Lily." The world around him blurred. The sound of hammers, voices, wind, all melted into silence. He didn't even remember the drive, only the trembling of his hands gripping the steering wheel, the whisper of her name repeating like a prayer. When he arrived, nurses were rushing through the corridor. He caught one by the arm. "What happened?" She collapsed this morning," the nurse said, eyes downcast. "Her lungs gave out suddenly. We're trying everything." Michael stumbled backward, his knees almost giving way. The room spun. He pushed past him into the ICU, where Lily lay surrounded by machines that beat frantically like ticking clocks. Her chest rose and fell in shallow waves. The ribbon in her hair had come loose, lying beside her pillow like a fallen promise. He dropped to his knees beside her bed, gripping her hand. "Lily," he whispered, "it's me. You're going to be fine, okay? You have to see the home. You have to paint the walls. Remember?" Her eyelids fluttered weakly. "I'm tired." "No," he said, shaking his head, voice breaking. "Not now. You promised. We had a deal." She tried to smile. "You finished what she started, remember?" Tears streamed down his face as he kissed her hand. "Don't talk like that. You're my daughter now, Lily. You hear me? My family." For a moment, she stared at him, a flicker of light in her tired eyes. "Then I'm home." The monitor screamed. Doctors rushed in, voices urgent, hands pressing, machines beeping. But Michael couldn't move. He stood frozen, watching through tears as a world dimmed around that one small heartbeat fighting to stay. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. Hours passed in silence. The rain returned that evening, soft, almost respectful, as though the sky itself was mourning. Michael sat outside her room, head buried in his hands, her ribbon clutched between his fingers. The hallway lights flickered gently, their hum blending with the storm outside. A nurse approached quietly. "She's resting now," she said. "Stable for the moment." He looked up, eyes swollen. "She's alive." The nurse nodded faintly. "Barely, but she's still fighting." He exhaled, trembling. "Then so will I." For the next few days, he refused to leave. He talked to her, read her stories, played her favorite lullabies through his phone speaker. He told her about the home, how the roof was almost finished, how the garden would have sunflowers and butterflies painted on every wall. "You're going to see it," he whispered, "even if I have to carry you there myself." Then, one night, while he dozed up beside her bed, he dreamed of Grace again. She stood in a golden field, holding a small child hand, a child with a red ribbon in her hair. Grace looked at him and smiled sadly. "You did good, Michael. You healed what I couldn't." He reached out to her, desperate. "Don't take her from me." "She's not leaving," Grace said softly. "She's just going ahead to light the home you built." He jolted awake, heart racing, sweat cold on his skin. The machines beside Lily still beeped, steady this time, but her breathing was faint, like the whisper of a candle about to flicker out. He held her hand and whispered, "If you need to rest, I'll understand. Just promise me you'll keep shining, wherever you go." The faintest smile curved her lips. "Promise." And in that fragile moment, something unseen wrapped the room in stillness, a peace so profound it felt like heaven was bending down to listen. The days that followed blurred together, sunrises that looked like endings, and nights that never really slept. Michael stayed beside Lily every hour, afraid that if he blinked too long, she might drift away. But somehow, she kept holding on. Her heartbeat, fragile but steady, refused to surrender. The doctors called it a miracle. Michael called it love. He had learned that love, once awakened, could defy even death for a while. When she finally opened her eyes again, it was a quiet afternoon. The light through the hospital window was soft and golden, painting the room in peace. She blinked up at him and whispered, "You're still here." He smiled faintly. "Where else would I be?" "I dreamed again," she said, her voice barely above a breath. "There were kids, lots of them. And you. You were smiling. The house was finished." He felt his throat tighten. "That's not just a dream anymore, Lily. The house is ready. It's waiting for you." Her gaze softened, eyes glimmering like sunlight on water. "Then take me there. I want to see it." He hesitated. The doctors had said she shouldn't move yet. But one look at her, and he knew she needed this. So, a few days later, they arranged a quiet visit. Michael carried her himself, wrapped in a soft blanket, her weight featherlight in his arms. The drive was long, but she never looked away from the window, watching the city roll by like a story she was finally part of. When they reached the Lily home of light, the sun was setting, the sky drenched in pink and gold. The building stood tall and beautiful, painted walls, bright windows, and a garden that shimmered with dew. A large sign hung near the entrance, "Welcome home." Michael whispered, "This is all yours." Lily's breath caught. "It's perfect." He carried her through the halls, children's laughter echoing from rooms still smelling of fresh paint. Staff paused, smiling, whispering her name. They all knew her story. He stopped at the art room. Canvases lined the walls, each painted by the children who'd already begun calling this place home. In the center stood an easel, blank and waiting. A small plaque beneath it read, "Reserved for Lily." Tears filled her eyes. "You really did it." "No," he said softly, setting her down near the window. "We did." She touched the easel with trembling fingers. "It's beautiful, Mr. Michael." He smiled. "Call me Dad. Just this once." Her lips trembled into a small smile. "Okay, Dad." He closed his eyes, fighting back the flood of emotions that rose within him. If you believe love still wins, comment Amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. The next few hours were quiet, just the sound of wind moving through the garden, laughter in the distance, and the steady hum of evening settling in. Michael took her hand. "Do you like it here?" "I love it," she whispered. "But promise me something." "Anything. Don't stop visiting the others, even if I can't." He froze. "Lily." She smiled faintly, eyes growing heavy. "It's okay. I'm not scared anymore. Because I know now, love never dies. It just moves." He wanted protest, but the calm in her voice was something sacred, untouchable. She looked around one last time, her gaze drifting toward the children playing in the garden. "Tell them they're safe now." He nodded, tears spilling silently. "I promise." Her breathing slowed, soft and rhythmic, her hand still in his. For a while, it seemed like she was only sleeping. And maybe she was, just not in a way the world could understand. When the final breath left her, it was peaceful, like a sigh returning to the sky. Michael didn't cry at first. He just sat there, holding her hand, feeling her warmth fade slowly into memory. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of gold, her color, her light. And in that moment, every wall in that home glowed, as if the world itself was whispering goodbye. The night after Lily's passing was unbearably still. The world outside the Lily home of light seemed to hold its breath, the wind gentle, the stars muted behind a veil of clouds. Inside, the hallways were quiet except for the faint hum of distant lullabies playing through the children's ward speakers. Michael sat alone in the art room, the same one where she had touched the blank easel. Her red ribbon rested in his hand, frayed but radiant, a small piece of color against the pale light. He whispered into the silence, "You said you'd paint this room first." His voice cracked. "Guess I'll finish it for you." And he did. All night long, he painted, strokes trembling, colors bleeding together, each one a memory of her laughter. By dawn, the wall was alive with light, a field of sunflowers reaching toward a sky filled with gold. And in the middle, he painted her, the little girl with tangled hair and a smile that had once resurrected a dying man's soul. When the children woke, they found him there, eyes swollen but calm. "She finished her story," he told them softly. "Now we'll tell the next one." In the weeks that followed, the home blossomed. More children arrived, some lost, some broken, all carrying hope stitched together by the memory of a girl who had owned nothing yet gave everything. The walls echoed with laughter again. The staff called it Lily's magic. Michael never left. He sold most of his companies, keeping only what was needed to sustain the home. Every morning, he'd walk the garden where sunflowers now grew, tall, golden, alive. He talked to her there, as if the wind still carried her giggles. Sometimes he'd whisper, "You were right, Lily." Love never dies. It just moves. He built a small bench beside the garden pond, engraved with her words, "You're not alone." Visitors came from across the world, drawn by the story that had gone viral months later, after one of the nurses shared a photo of Lily's final painting. People began donating, writing letters, sending stones painted with words of hope. The garden soon overflowed with them, hundreds of little testaments to her kindness. Children began calling them Lily's messages. Each stone carried something different. Stay strong. Keep believing. You matter. And together, they formed a path leading to the orphanage entrance. Anyone who arrived there, carrying pain or fear, would walk that path and feel lighter before even stepping inside. Michael stood by the gate one evening, watching a new group of children arrive. They clutched tiny bags and wide eyes, the same way Lily had the first day he saw her through the rain. He smiled through tears. "Welcome home," he said. And for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel the ache of loss, only warmth. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." Years passed. Seasons turned. The world outside changed, but the Lily Home of Light remained a beacon, a reminder that miracles weren't grand gestures. They were small hearts refusing to harden. One crisp Father's Day morning, Michael walked to the garden bench, a mug of coffee in hand. The children were laughing in the distance, their joy filling the air like music. He sat down, tracing the carved letters beneath his fingers. "You're not alone." He looked up at the rising sun, whispering, "Happy Father's Day, kiddo." A sudden breeze swept through the garden, rustling the flowers. One of the stones rolled gently from the path and landed at his feet. He picked it up, pale blue, with a single word painted in childlike handwriting. "Thank you." He smiled, eyes glistening. "You're welcome, Lily." And as the wind danced through the sunflowers, the light seemed to linger just a moment longer, like heaven itself had paused to remember the little girl whose love had changed a lonely billionaire's life forever.